Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm very excited for today's topic and to introduce you all to Dr. Amy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thanks, Caitlin. Thanks for having me.
Well, last time we chatted, we talked so much about your work and what you do, and I'd love for you to just share with our listeners to start a overview of what you do. And I know that there's a lot of nuances to it, which we'll get into
Yeah,
today's episode.
yeah. So I'm somebody that doesn't fit into boxes, so I'll start to list a few things just very high level and stay with me along the quick high level journey of it. My professional training is I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I started off as a primary care provider in the state of California 23 years ago. And what ended up happening is I realized that I had a lot of intuitive and deep healership gifts that because I was such an academic prior to that, I had not discovered. So that all unfolded in the first month of my practice or so. And then it's been unfolding ever since then, and just really demonstrating. But along the way, because I had such a large waiting list for a new patient, I actually had about a year-long waiting list when I was about 2 years in on my practice for somebody new to enter my practice. So I decided to specialize. So I ended up doing executive coaching and strategic advising. And then I ended up kind of circling back to something that was alive for me in my undergrad. I was studying the brain when I was an atheist, my freshman, my first year of university, right? And um, so I ended up meeting up with a colleague of mine, and we have worked together to create a new space inside of neurosciences, which works toward wisdom and consciousness and leadership skills. And we're doing that via changing how people's brains are working in real time in our laboratory, using the most advanced hardware and software, and then application of those hardware and software in the world. So it's kind of a path that doesn't make a lot of sense on paper, and it's been a really fun weaving and reveal every step of the way.
Oh my gosh, your background is so cool. I actually never knew that about you, which is so funny from the last time we talked. Can you share with us what it's like to take a peek inside people's brains and I'm sure that you must feel so connected, but also I'm also sure you could see patterns, right? In like
Oh yeah.
similar ways that people's brains work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. By the time somebody comes to receive their EEG, their electroencephalogram, so it's the same level of study that would be happening at research universities or with the neurologist or whatever, I already know them a bit. And so what my experience of it is like, yep, there it is. See that little red thing? That's what I had already felt and known and had been able, not necessarily to name the exact patterns, although I do sometimes have really good hunches of what their brain will look like when we have a look at it. But I do definitely know that when my colleague, because he's really the deep interpreter of that neurological data, when he's naming it off, the experience that the client is having is a feeling of, oh, wow, let's say the squishy stuff that I've been able to name in my ability to see who they are and what's really going on in a very short period of time is now being validated by data that is staring back at them from the screen that it just makes a lot of people are actually quite intimidated by the process, but the way that I hold it and that my colleague holds it is like, hey, look, if we can name it, we can train it. We can literally change how this looks, but it's like a before and after picture. It can be a vulnerable moment to take a before picture, right? And so I really love holding just the knowing and that depth of truth and wisdom of being in practice alongside my colleague for 14 years and having seen a lot of people go through metamorphosis, having seen a lot of brain images at this point, and having full faith that it's a validation process and it's a part of knowing how we get after because we are so highly, highly specific in how we address each person's brain. So I see it as kind of that unique fingerprint that's as much about their neurological information as it is how they've been living their life, which is the same thing, how they feel about themselves, how they perceive reality, how they respond to situations, their capacity for strategy, their capacity for compassion, their ability to sleep, all the things. And to be able to just see that really spelled out so clearly it gives us a really deep place for traction, but it also gives us a place for compassion because most people think to themselves, I'm broken, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. And we're like, no, it's kind of like your brain has a sprained ankle. We just need to do some PT, and you're actually amazing, right? This is something that came up because of a trauma or because of genetics or because of whatever it is. And it doesn't mean that you're broken or flawed. And here's how and here's the very direct path of how we're going to get it better.
Wow.
So it's an amazing, amazing reveal, truly.
That is so cool. I'm like recently in my life, I feel like every time I talk with you, I learn so much. But in my life, a lot of very close people have actually been going to neurologists and, like, for different medical reasons. And
Mm,
I think in modern day, when people hear that, the first initial thought is like, oh my gosh, fear. And
right.
you see that. I mean, you mentioned it's sometimes scary to see the screen and look at, like, oh my gosh. I mean, when I started looking at my own thought patterns and realizing that I was like totally abusing myself in my brain,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, why am I being so mean to my little brain? Like, it's not done anything wrong. And why is this the way it is? But you all are able to almost pinpoint that too. Like,
Oh, very pinpointed. Yeah.
so
Like
cool.
there would be a specific area of your brain if that is, let's say, if that's a severe enough situation for you, that it would be a red spot that correlates to about the size of, let's say, a quarter or like a, like a slightly larger area on the cortex of the brain, the outer wrapper of the brain, that is potentially bleeding out 30% of your neurological energy. And I don't mean woo energy, I'm talking about neuron energy, the electrical impulses. And so, what we do is tell that area of the brain. So, neurofeedback therapy, let me just segue into that. Neurofeedback therapy is basically the brain being fed back how it's doing so it can change and grow because it's out of homeostasis. Like if you have that kind of a thought pattern that's just burning 30% of your energy, the body wants to be in homeostasis. The brain knows that it wants a better function, but because of maybe your genetics, maybe you inherited it, maybe it came from an early childhood trauma, whatever, however you got that, right? It doesn't exactly matter the origin. What we can do is tell that area of the brain via a computer feedback system. So sensors on the scalp go into a computer. The computer then feeds that information back to the brain. And if you're overusing that little area of your brain that way, the computer is like, nope, you're not getting the reward. And so your brain figures out how to reroute information and perform differently faster than your mind can perceive. So it's actually a conversation directly between the hardware and the software in your brain, not your mind, right? Your mind has to get out of the way in order to have this thing work. And so people do, even people that are very like, gripping the wheel, type A, I'm going to make this thing perform. What they realize is that they have to chill out. Our best performers in this way are going to be people who are either very non-attached or are less than age 12 because they haven't had a chance to really learn how to trip out and make themselves stressed in the ways that adults do when we have more of that beta kind of functioning coming in. In those tween years, we end up kind of having a different function happen. So when people really let go and relax into it, or as they're learning to do that, their brain is literally learning how to not, in that case, overfire that one area. And what happens when we take that 30% of wasted power and we allow it without even any further instruction, we just allow it to redistribute through the brain, is the person becomes more of who they actually are.
Wow.
Isn't that a beautiful thing? Right? They have more space for presence. They have more space for compassion. They notice that not only they're less anxious, but they're more clear because the rest of the brain can work better. But we don't leave it there. We actually bring it then where we fine tune all of those beautiful mechanisms, and really help to enliven who that person really is. But it is all available. Our neurological fingerprint that we see on that EEG is such a unique signature. And we can also see, the depths of who someone is peeking through in that signature. And we invite that out. And it's truly a marvel to be a part of.
That
Yeah.
is so cool. Like, I actually have chills as you're explaining this. And one thing that you were saying is like, as I was thinking about this, that movie Inside Out is what this is reminding me of all of the different emotions in the brain.
Yeah.
Right? Like for the listeners that may not be able to think about this in like a science-based mind,
Right.
think about Inside Out when you're experiencing these level of motions that are like overfiring and you all
Yeah.
can see it on the brain.
Right.
I'm curious, do you all help your clients overcome like some really serious neurological diagnoses with this type of treatment too?
Yeah. So we're not allowed to diagnose, treat, or cure anything because we're
Yeah.
not part of the medical machinery.
Disclaimer on my
However,
question.
yeah, totally. But I can tell you that there are people have had whether they're a psychological diagnosis that's come by a clinician or just a felt experience of anxious feelings or depressed feelings. Sometimes we see people expressing symptoms of cognitive decline, like memory gaps, or just kind of sometimes as people age, they actually become more withdrawn and a little bit crusty, let's say. And so these all could have like some severe or intense names associated with them, which I'm not going to use because we don't treat any of those things. However, we watch all of those things change on the regular. And it's very, like I said, if you took your car to a mechanic and they actually knew what was going on, it's like, let's just swap out some spark plugs, and whatever. And you're not going to have that rough idle almost stall at the stop sign. Like, won't that be amazing? Right. And so there's just a lot of things that we don't have to live with that we've been taught that basically we're living inside of the frame of pathology, right? Like we're expected to have a crappy reality in which we maybe could slightly improve ourselves over time, but this is just the way we are. This is my life. This is how I am. And when we watch people have those things drop away, what it really lends to is just the reinforcement of that we are creating our own reality and that we are infinitely capable as beings, that we are miracles in flesh, and that the timeless soul that we are is not our personality, which is a really big consciousness construct that doesn't really mean anything unless you can live it, right? Because people can be very identified with, well, I'm just an intellectual or I'm just nervous. Like I just, whatever it is, right? I don't know how to have compassion. That's just the way I am. And I'm going to expect everybody around me to deal with that. And it's like, well, as we evolve, as we really move forward in our progression, what about if we keep all of the intellect and add compassion? And
Wow.
this is wisdom and this is leadership and it's all possible. And it's possible via so many avenues, obviously, right? Like people might go to breath work or plant medicine to have a huge release, or they may do somatic therapy or whatever. To me, there is no more direct route than going exactly to where the thing lives in the brain, not in the vagus nerve, which is downstream of the brain, not in the quote autonomic or limbic system, which is like, I'm sorry, we're not going to get there at the same speed with binaural beats or something as we are just telling the brain directly, that's not the way we do it. This is how we do it, right? Like, this is your optimal state. Here's what it feels like to be your infinite self with all of your capacity in this true place of home inside of you. That's
Yeah.
a very different signal than incrementally getting better, right? It's just,
It's so cool. I'm like, so like, I hope the listeners see my face in this because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like everything that I believe, was
hmm
possible. But until I met
hmm
you, I've never heard of another practitioner doing this. I don't know a doctor that does this like yourself. Like, you combine the science and the woo woo, for like
Yeah,
lack of better terms, which
totally.
with me is like totally who I am. I've always been more logical and like rational as a person. So
hmm
when I met you, I just was so drawn to the work you do. And I'm so glad we're getting to share it with our listeners. Outside of this, like I want to talk to you about some of my family that I know would benefit from working with
Yeah.
you all. Like there's just the way I thought about this when I was first learning about thought loops was electrical currents because that's
hmm
the only way that it like made sense to me. When I was in college, I studied electrical currents and we used to like make little, they call them like switchboards of how you learn how to like connect different electrical currents. It was like minor electricity class. And I
Awesome.
loved it because it made me really understand electrical currents. Like, unless you don't know anything about that, how would you understand how the sparks work and all of that?
Totally,
But it
totally.
does really feel like the brain works that way.
Yeah, so like I said, as a piece of background, I came into this as an atheist. And then the woo path actually opened up and it created a massive change for me that I was not expecting as an atheist. I wasn't looking for a spiritual awakening, but one found me at 18. And no, I wasn't working with psychedelics. I was completely sober and it happened. So there's a merging that's really deep because I started my studies of the brain when I was so young. But I would also say to your point about the electrical, so my colleague was an electrical and nuclear engineer at a
Really?
very, very high level of skill and training with extreme responsibilities inside of the military because he wanted to be the first person on Mars, by the way, but that's a side story.
Oh, cool.
And the way that he was placed, he totally could have done that. That mission was aborted and as far as going to Mars, and so he quickly got out of the military and found different ways. But when he looked at when he looked at an EEG for the first time and he saw the waves going by, all those squiggly lines on the page, he knew that he knew how to read that because he already had a massive level of skill and training, and he's was super brilliant as a human. But he's also just quite like deeply the cosmonaut as well. Like he is so interested in and deeply understands consciousness. So I think that a lot of what has happened in modern society is that we have believed that everything that isn't currently explainable by science is called woo. But
Yeah.
the thing is that what Einstein put forward, we haven't even finished integrating as a society, right? Like there's quantum stuff that we don't know how the scientific community has shunned because they can't necessarily fully integrate it yet. It's not a part of their belief structure yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Yeah.
It just means that we're as a society trailing, or, the way that I understood it at age 18 when I was praying to the God of science at that point in my life, right? Like I really thought that we could figure out what it was to be human and our reality if we understood neurotransmitters. But what I realized since then is that science serves spirituality and science serves the truth, but it is not the truth, like end to end, because it's always trailing. Acupuncture just finally got validated in studies, let's say in the last 10 to 15, 20 years, in the
Wow.
way that it should have been. It's been around for, let's say, 1,000 years,
Yeah, way
right?
before
And
science or
so
even Einstein was a thing, right?
exactly. And how does it work? It's probably working on fascia, which is probably a piezoelectric current that's moving through the body. I'm not saying that is what it is, but that's a really solid theory for how it's working.
Definitely.
They finally just got around to proving that it does work. We're going to take longer to figure out how it works. In the meantime, I'm going to continue to put needles in people and get them better when they come to one of our events, right? Like I don't have a normal brick and mortar practice for just everybody to come to, but certainly I'm going to use all the tools that do no harm to help people now because I'm not waiting for science to validate what we know is true in a clinical experience. And I'm not waiting for science to catch up. The microtubules in the brain are working in a quantum field. There are people that are finally able to say that. But we just got to a place, even though neurofeedback therapy has existed since the 1960s, it wasn't consistently allowed to be talked about that we could have something called neuroplasticity after a brain reaches adulthood until about 20 to 25 years ago. People that spoke about neuroplasticity were shunned, right?
Wow.
People that talked about gravity back in the day were told that they were being antithetical to the church. We're still in that same pattern,
Yes.
right? It's amazing. So everything that is woo now will have its scientific validation. If it's real, it will be validated. There is definitely stuff that's out there that I'm like, yeah, that's not even, my gut tells me that that stuff's not real. But
Yeah.
there's this place where we're living is grounded, this practice that we have is grounded in the absolute practicality of taking peak performers to all new levels. We're not turning them into bliss bunnies that want to like leave their family and move to an ashram and just do a lot of psychedelics or something. Like these are people who have massive posts that they run, really huge responsibilities, and they're hurting inside. And they need to have some more support and alignment to be able to perform at the level that they're looking to perform.
It's
So
so
we help those folks and we do it in ways that are grounded in the absolute rigors of science. And we're doing it knowing that this is actually a timeless soul on an endless journey. and that there are things that we don't know, which allows the perceptual window to become bigger. If we think that we know everything, first off, that's arrogant. Second off, if it has to be that science proved it, it's like it's an inherent arrogance. But the other thing is that if we believe that we understand something, we're no longer allowing for our perceptual aperture. The lens doesn't get big enough to actually capture the real data that is present and the real possibilities that are with that, right? So we're living inside of that space that it is science and spirituality. But I think that it's the science that science forgot, because it used to be that doctors were charged with getting people better, not with labeling them with a name and then prescribing them a medication, right? If you live through the lens of this person, I am dedicated to finding the solution for them, you're automatically in a bigger lens as a clinician. And that's a really exciting way to live. It can be scary if you feel threatened by not having all the answers. But if we can be in that energy of like, hey, we can't know all the answers, and that doesn't make us flawed, it actually gives us better capacity to be helpful, to be so humble. Then we have real miracles at our fingertips.
It's so cool. Like I'm obsessed with everything that you just said. It's truthfully what I believe. Like our listeners know my mom was ill, and I shared with you before about this too. And I see this in the medical field very frequently. And there is almost an energy about clinicians that come in and they will say things like, every single case is a theory because your body is unique, right? And we don't know until we're in there, and we won't know
Mm-hmm.
about this. It's all theory, especially looking at something like, my mom's situation. Even my fiance also was ill recently, and a scan could only say so much. And a few
Mm-hmm.
doctors would come in and say, this is exactly what it is, and it's going to take X amount of time. And he would be left feeling so distraught. And I was like, listen, it's all theory. I've
Yeah,
done this before. It's going to be okay. Just keep thinking positive. And he healed
right.
within like a fraction of the time that they thought that
Yeah,
he would. And
yeah.
I think that I know you're so spot on, but for the listeners that are wondering, oh my gosh, am I confused by this? Trust your gut when it comes to who you want to work with and how much more expansive it could be when
Mm-hmm.
working with a clinician that's able to say, I don't know what this is, but let's figure it out. Or let's
Let's figure it out. We're not going to put our head in the sand, and we're not going to ignore that this could be something really huge. That's irresponsible, but it's also irresponsible to pretend that we know the full scope or like the full potential of what's possible. I actually had somebody that um, had an ultrasound, and from the ultrasound received the diagnosis in that day by somebody that said that they had cancer. And you can't actually diagnose lymphoma based on an ultrasound. All you can say is there's something wrong with that particular, right?
inflammation, right?
Yeah.
Is
And
all they
so
could really see.
exactly, like we don't know what's in there. And even if things look like that's the pattern, we can't necessarily say that that's for sure what it is. A biopsy is the gold standard. So the clinician was actually acting outside of the best practices and was overstepping by making that diagnosis. But what's the impact of that on the patient?
Yeah. Oh my
Right?
gosh.
Instead of saying we must really continue to pursue this is super important. This could be XYZ. It may not be. The only way we're going to know is, but I think that I think it's easy sometimes for humans to fall into the trap that they know, or that just because we think we've seen something before, maybe we look with fresh eyes. So anyway, he had the biopsy, and in fact, he's not sick with
Hey.
lymphoma.
Oh,
Um,
I'm so happy for
I
him.
know,
My
right? It's
goodness. What a
huge.
blessing.
It's
Yeah.
huge. And what a learning, right? And so we really have to notice, when we call into our lives, whether it's um, a major health thing or whether it's a minor thing or anything that we're struggling with, maybe not even in our body, but in our lives, what is it that is here to teach us? And often it's here to help us to either shed something that's a perpetual pattern of shame or fear, or it's us not fully stepping into our power or into our wisdom. And the event is actually here to serve, and I say this from a point of view of I've had my own huge share of medical issues that started when I was 2 weeks old. I was given so much medication when I was a kid. I had all kinds of different systems of my body um, having a huge amount of distress. And, so I don't say that from the point of view of like, oh, my health has always been perfect. And if somebody has something wrong with them, there must be something so flawed, but rather just from that deep wisdom that has come from understanding that my body and also the people that I help, all of us, our body is not misbehaving if there is a health issue. It is actually telling us something. And as much as we want to be responsible about handling that thing in the 3D ways of like, is there a, a treatment or a supplement or is there what is the right step on that level to really look at and be with the truth that is underneath all of it so that we can unravel it from there. That's the real thing that we're being called to do. And if we get rid of it symptomatically, even if it's with natural medicine, often things recur because that's what happens. And until we learn what it is that's being taught, we will find that message again and again, whether it, like I said, whether it be through health or life. So how do we open the lens instead of getting really like mad at a body part or just trying to fix it as if it's an inanimate object or fix an area of our life as if we're a robot? How do we take the bigger lens and through that lens find the real solution and the real answer and the real wisdom and the peace that come out the other side, right? There's always a benefit that's bigger than the negative if we can get ourselves there.
Totally. Oh my gosh, it's so good because we see so many people struggling, right, on a daily. And I'm sure that's what you all see so frequently. And especially people that are more self aware, right, to come and get a diagnosis with you all. And they're probably like, I need this. I'm at the end
Mhm.
of my rope, right? I've tried everything and maybe I've tried what I thought would work and it didn't. And why are these patterns still coming back up? Like we talk about this on the End in Mind all the time, thought loops, beliefs,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
you all can really assist with the rewiring. Like in myself, these therapies that I've done, it doesn't mean that they totally isolate the pattern ever, right? Like I still
Right.
have to be aware when it's coming up. And sometimes it does feel like a lot of pressure to be
Yeah.
so self aware all the time. It sounds like with this treatment, it would allow some of the pressure to be taken off after working with you all.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if there's a harmony within the biology, that our brain is setting, like I said before, our entire experience of reality. So if that area is not a hot spot anymore, it's not red on the scan anymore, it goes to clear, you'll experience reality differently and it doesn't require as much willpower. You still will have presence, but it won't be as difficult to achieve presence, right? Like it's always a good idea. We never outgrow the healthy desire or of what presence is. But just to be able to achieve that more easily. So a lot of what I've been describing is when people, we have at most about 30 people come in person for some of our more advanced programs and trainings here on site per year. So it's a very small number of folks. It's a high level of screening on our end to see if they're a great fit. We're looking for really incredible leverage points. It doesn't have to mean that they're like famous or whatever, but just are they doing something that we really believe in? Because we're here to leverage change for greater good by affecting so deeply that few number of people. But I also want to speak to that. We have offerings that can be done remotely at a much lesser cost that do make a massive change to people's nervous system and reality and incorporate the science and technology at home with some remote care from a coach or a guide through the process. So we are finding ways to kind of help with the economy, the economics of this. I used to be a practitioner, as you can hear in my story, for the everyday folks. Like really, just anybody would come and I would help them, and that's really my heart. But I also recognized at some point that if I'm looking at how do I leverage for greater good, we have to create really deep impact for the people that are sitting at the tables that are making decisions that impact the lives of millions and billions of people. So that's really where we're focused with those on-site programs, but the other programs are available for so many folks and create really deep nervous system change and fall inside of the scope of what it is that we're describing here as far as its application, right? The philosophy behind it and the way that the approach happens is identical in that regard. Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that you do the in person, but that you all have expanded. I was going to ask if you virtually are able to treat clients. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
perfect for our listeners. And whether for the listeners, whether it's yourself or someone else that you think they may benefit from this, maybe it's everyone. I mean, I feel like everybody should do this, honestly, you
I
know?
know. It's true. It's true. I mean, there's so much benefit to just working directly into the brain and into these more strategic ways of being. One thing that I can offer too that's available for everybody, there's a free download on our website. And there is I like to call the transformation that we do really, it is a very high level of technology. So we haven't talked about that. We've been more talking about the tech that plugs into the wall with the brain stuff. But the way that the approach for transformation happens inside of Holon is very, very different than in other methodologies. And it works with how our energetics work, which is then validated by, of course, the neurosciences. So it's a very different system. It's not what people are used to experiencing if they're out exploring energetics. So anyway, there's a download that's available that walks people through a simple process that helps them to feel safe and regulated in their body, absolutely like shift in real time. And then from that safety, it helps them to experience the interconnectedness. Because a lot of us might have the thought of, I'm a part of the all that is, or I matter, or, the world is here to support me, and I have, a deep allyship with the divine, but they're maybe not experiencing that as a reality. And that can be really harsh.
Yeah, it's like, I know I believe this, but where is it?
Yeah,
Right. And so
exactly.
many of us feel like that. And it can make you feel hopeless too, like, especially
Totally.
in the thick of the healing journeys. I remember I talk about this a lot on the podcast. I would feel like there was something wrong with me, like especially
Hmm.
with certain diagnosis that I've gotten, like PTSD, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so broken. Like I told my fiance that, and he was like, Caitlin, you're okay. Everything's gonna be okay, you know?
Right.
But you're always looking externally. What if you didn't have to? What if now you could just come to Dr. Amy and definitely try her freebie downloadable?
The freebie is amazing. Like that'll change somebody's life all by itself. I've really
Wow.
heard just so many stories of people that are like, I've never been able to meditate. I actually meditated for the first time, the very first time I tried that. Or I'm a consistent meditator of 10 years. That was the most potent meditation that I've ever dropped into. So I really do encourage people to just work with that free download. The information that is in it and what I'm guiding people through is gold. And then for instance, the let's just talk about PTSD. Thanks for saying that about you. I didn't know that. So with what we see a lot of the times with PTSD is that alpha waves are very suppressed and they're having a hard time coming back. So
Yeah.
oftentimes what's really tricky about PTSD is that it's very difficult for somebody to meditate or get into a calm state because literally their brain doesn't know how to make those alpha waves. So that's interesting. A lot of the times, too, that's why people, and I'm not saying you, but a lot of people with PTSD might reach for alcohol because alcohol starts to lift up alpha. Although it's not clean alpha, it's not healthy alpha, it's a little bit of alpha. And we actually need alpha not just when we're meditating or in a state kind of between asleep and awake. We need it to burst occasionally all through our day. It's like a
Wow.
page refresh. So, for people that are kind of in this loop, it's so important to understand that. And there are a lot of ways to get there. I really love powerful, deep breath work, like the huff and puff kind of breath work. That can be huge. It can also be too much for someone. And at the wrong moment, it could be a bad thing. But I'm just saying, in general, that's an awesome idea. For some folks, they might want to reach for um, my colleague actually designed a headset that does neurofeedback therapy at home safely for many people. I'm not saying all, and I'm definitely not making a prescription right now because I don't know the listener. But if it's appropriate for them, there's a headset called the Sensei that can help bring alpha up, which when we bring alpha up, the symptoms of PTSD often shift. So that's huge. The same thing with the neurovisor, and if the listeners are, if it's appropriate, which I cannot say that it is because I'm not making medical claims or diagnoses, it might be super helpful to use the neurovisor, which is a photobiomodulation, fancy word for lights that change how your body works. And you can shift yourself into different experiences of reality within 5 to 12 minutes with this device that I don't leave home without personally. It's an amazing tool for, let's say, recovery after I'm doing work travel or just anytime I want to sleep. You know, I feel like I'm not going to be able to sleep well, whatever it is. That's a huge tool. So if people want to purchase one of those, I actually have a discount code, which is HOLON, HOLON. And you could go to neurovisor.com. So we have those kind of tools. And then also inside of the spectrum of what we offer, just even for like the diagnosis of PTSD, there's a polyvagal method that we can administer remotely that's actually a sound healing. So it's not binaural beats and it's not any of that. It's a filtered sound that changes it modulates how the vagus nerve is signaling from the place of the middle ear by changing how the structure of the middle ear functions muscularly. And also there's some sort of a neurological, there is so we don't have all of the data and the science, and I have to be careful not to make health claims, but let's just say that people that have any element of PTSD, whether they feel like they've recovered from it or not, if they've had really scary or traumatic events or an unstable environment as a kid, we've seen amazing clinical results with that as well. And there's one of our coaches on the team that is specifically trained in administering that and guiding the process because it's so deep that people need to talk and to debrief as they go through that. But it's a relatively short program and it's making such a huge difference. So thanks for sharing PTSD because that helps me then to say a few things that just come to my mind.
So
To
helpful. Oh
help.
my
Yeah.
gosh. That's so cool. Honestly, it's so great to hear because I do, when I was going through my I would say like awakening, like realizing that I had PTSD because
Hmm.
in my situation, I was definitely living in denial of it for so long. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people do because it's scary, like you said, to talk about it. And if you
Yeah.
don't have a guide and if you don't have someone that's willing to talk about it over and over and over again, because sometimes PTSD can feel like you're reliving it when you
Yeah.
get to talk about it again. Um, it can feel very triggering, but these tools seem like it would make the process a lot smoother
Oh,
and
yeah.
maybe less reactionary. Like my
Totally.
life became a little bit messy, to be like
Yeah,
totally honest.
when people have either suppressed memories or they're in full-scale denial and they start to get in touch with their trauma pattern or their trauma moment of the past, it can be absolutely overwhelming and completely overcome their life. And so
Yeah.
there's a good reason in that regard why they suppressed or denied it to begin with, is that it's kind of just too much. But that's where I would say we want to use technology. And again, the kind we plug in the wall, but also the transformational technology, because I've helped, I can't tell you how many people over the last 23 years step through what should have been extremely re traumatizing, and they actually feel liberated and free in less than an hour. So I just want to offer that again because it's a frame change, right? The idea that we have to suffer is not a correct assumption. The
Yeah.
idea that we are miracles embodied, and that if we utilize our technology, transformational technology included, correctly, then we don't have to have more pain. We actually have the alleviation of pain, right?
Wow.
But we have kind of some barbaric and early ideas still about psychology that just need to evolve, in my opinion. And so that's what we're doing. And even just that free download is a huge tool for, if anybody's listening and they're like, I'll never be able to, that's fine. Do the free download, right? Like everybody can afford that. Once you learn how to do it, you don't even have to have time to do it because you just do it all during the day. You're just running with it through your day. I love being efficient. I love being really
Yeah.
practical. So you can also drop in eyes closed for 5 minutes and totally change your reality. You change the aperture of your awareness and the way that you approach your day and feel about yourself. And the interconnectedness of all things is available in a 5-minute shift if you want to take 5 minutes, right? If you want to take 20 minutes, that's great. You can close your eyes, you can open your eyes. This is a reality shift that's available. But it's so important that people understand that there's a giant call to action here to step out of the frame of suffering and pathology and that it's hopeless. We already have enough of that kind of going on systemically right now. And I
Yes.
would say that if we as individuals can wake up to our power and our possibility and transform just even ourselves, we will end up being a change agent for the good. That we
Yes.
don't need to suffer because there's suffering going on. We actually need to liberate ourselves because only the lifeguard can save the drowning, right? The drowning don't save the drowning. Not that anybody needs saving, but just as an analogy, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So
So
please,
good.
everybody, no matter what you get from this, just hear and understand the miracles and the possibilities. And maybe, you've tapped into a world that you didn't know exists by listening to this, and just live with that, come back to that knowing again and again, and put in place some small tools or things that you can move forward with. But if that's all you've got in this moment, but be sure to remember this for yourself, because it's a really important moment for us to awaken to the paradigm that we're in and where we are wanting to be as people and as a collective. So please encourage everybody to just find it within. It is there,
And what
really.
an amazing opportunity this is. I felt like that was just you explaining to all of us that this is right in front of us. And who are
Hmm.
we to not step
That's
forward
right.
into this, right?
That's
Like
right.
when we think about the collective, I've shared this on the podcast too. Um, when I was little and I was struggling, I was an only child, so I had to live in my head a lot, hence the
Mm.
PTSD. I, I would imagine myself as a grain of rice or like a
Oh,
piece of sand. And that really helped me in whatever circumstance I was in.
that's
Like it
right.
brought me back to the collective. And when
That's
you
right.
think about your healing as the collective, it's almost like the perfect amount of pressure because you're like, if I don't do this, then I won't be showing up for the collective. But like, I'm also doing this for myself, right? So it's a lot of balance to that, but it kept me coming back because I wasn't just
Yeah.
doing it for me, right? I was
I love that you were a grain of sand or a little piece of like a piece of rice or whatever. That's so amazing.
myself.
Yeah, that's that early wisdom that we see here now that we can feel in you, right? And it's still coming forward. So I would say, as somebody that maybe had a little bit martyr energy of like having to do things on behalf of the collective, I'm a recovering martyr, right? I'm a
Yes.
recovering workaholic also. Like,
Yeah.
let's just be really real about all of it. I think that for those of us that were born on some level into something that's not ideal, but also we're born with a feeling of purpose and drive and having been downloaded into this lifetime for a mission, it can feel like an extraordinary amount of burden or pain and impossibility. We're like, I can't even deal with my life. How do I deal with anything else? But I think that ultimately is that separateness. So
Yeah.
there is when we're inside of the pressure, when we're inside of scarcity of time, when we're inside of the feeling of it's too much responsibility or it's too much, we're creating a paradigm that is inaccurate. We're living inside of duality. And what we really want to do in those moments is be able to level up so that we can shift into a place where we understand those sorts of pressures, but that we create a safe harbor. And the
Yeah.
safe harbor is created breath by breath, moment by moment, right? So I point people back again to that download. So if we can, instead of being caught inside of that paradigm, live inside of the truth of the oneness, then what happens is that we're actually open to the divine is constantly wanting to bless us. We're
Yes.
constantly noping it. If you're not in a perpetual state of joy and bliss, and maybe even kind of like on the edge of an orgasm, that means you're noping something.
Right. It's so true. Yeah.
So, what if we just didn't do that?
I love it. So good. Because life can be like that.
Totally. And I don't mean that in a bliss bunny, I'll just float away and
Right.
think happy thoughts about crappy things and be okay. And in the meantime, live in denial. I mean, in a way where we're actually firing on all of our cylinders and getting things done and extremely practical, but we're not doing it at the expense of ourselves. And we're not, we're really tapped into this deeper truth and capacity, or leveled up into is maybe another way to say it. So allowing ourselves to receive from the divine and from the all that is critical inside of our capacity to be those, the super version of ourself, and to be able to be what it is that we've been called here to the planet for. So being careful not to fall into the loop of I have to be so much more and I'm not doing my job or whatever, and instead be excited. Like, okay, this is such a fun mission. Like, wow, what an amazing time to be alive right now. First off, there's a lot going on. And within that, there's also so much more technology available. And
Yes.
there's also so much more possibility available.
Yeah.
And we can make change right now because of the energies that exist and because of the moment that we are in time so easily. So I'm going to go towards everything with ease, right? I'm going to go towards everything right now in such a way that I can be lifted by this possibility personally and allow for all the gifts and the blessings that are here for all of us in this time to come for me, and allow myself to find those perfect solutions so that I can get out of this pain struggle paradigm that I know is it's a part of my teaching, and it's also a part of my illusion. And as I move through all of that with grace and ease and really, let's say, transformational badassery, then what I know is that everything is possible, right? Even in the process, we're living inside of the possibility, but without denying the pain or the struggle or the gifts or the joy. We don't have to pick one or the other. It's all together.
So exciting.
It is exciting.
It really is. It's like I feel so excited to, like you said, live here and be doing these things and
Hmm.
meet these people, right? To be having this conversation. Like, what an opportunity this is. No one in my world is talking about this. And I feel like today it was so meant to be. Thank you so much. This was
You're
so
welcome.
awesome.
Yeah, it's
I'm
been a
gonna
fun
listen to
combo.
this like every
Good.
day. I'm like, this will be my meditation. I'll do the free meditation online. Everybody definitely needs to get that. We'll have that linked in the show notes below as well. And then
Hmm.
of course the other QR codes that you mentioned too, and they get discount codes for the listeners.
Hmm.
Um, but this is a really good episode to come back to whenever you're feeling a little bit off, or like it's
Yeah.
doomsday out there. Remind yourself it's not, it's actually the perfect time for an opportunity to go after exactly what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Using this element of change to
Yeah.
leverage into what it is that we're most wanting,
So
what's
cool.
available. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I loved it. Thank you
Hmm.
so much. And thank you so much for all of your time today and your explanations of everything. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, how we can get in touch? I mean, we'll have everything in the show notes below. Is there any other way that we can follow along or consume different ideas that you guys may be coming up with?
Yeah. I would say that I've been so focused on helping people and really developing this body of medicine and knowledge that I have not done a whole bunch with, let's say, Instagram or any of those kind of things, but I know. So that's where we're at. I would say that at some point I will get a YouTube channel going. So if people want to stay tuned for that, I think that the best way right now to get a hold of me is through the website. There's a contact us form. There's an application form. You don't have to know exactly what you're looking for. You can just tell us where you're at, and then someone on the team will meet with you and help you to find the right path. Also, by doing that free download, you do get added to an email list where we'll send more updates and also just be publishing ideas and bringing things forward. So you can stay tuned for, new ideas and just have that as a resource as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh, cutting edge stuff. It's so
It
exciting.
is.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Dr. Amy. This was so lovely. For all of our listeners, like I said, I'll have all the links in the show notes below. If you have any confusion finding anything, please always feel free to DM me and I will clarify any of your questions. So thank you so much. This was so
Thank
great.
you. It's been awesome, Caitlin. Thanks.
Thanks.